All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Seth Paskin, and I'm the host for this WebEx. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started, but we're going to keep it short. So this is part of a series of best practice webinars that we started about a month and a half ago. We're doing them every other week for 30 minutes at this same time, Wednesday morning Central Time for 30 minutes. The goal of these is to get some BMC partner and customer experts in front of you to share some ideas and best practices about how to do various things with our product set. It's intended to be interactive, so we want you to ask questions via the Q&A window, and at the end we'll have time for Q&A and I'll be able to unmute your lines. Currently everybody is muted. If you need to be unmuted to ask a question, please let me know via chat. We'll monitor the Q&A. Page where we have the webinar calendar for past events where we have recordings. So this meeting is being recorded and it will be shared via BMC communities afterwards. And then you can also see the future events that we have and offer suggestions for topics, or if you'd like to be a presenter yourself, you are welcome to reach out to me for that purpose. So with that in mind, today we're going to talk about best practices for configuring agent-based collection in TrueSight Capacity Optimization, and we have Dima from our Platinum Engineering team. And so with that, Dima, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Dima Seliverstov. I've been with BMC BGS for 20 years. I worked in Platinum Engineering, and part of the time I do software development, so it's about a 50-50 split on new features and fixes for existing features. So I'm kind of like the Star Trek guy that has one face, one color, and the other side of the face, the other color. I'm going to talk about the product that I worked on. I'm in charge of the agent and the automation to make sure the agent collects, transfers, and processes the data. A little bit about our product. So the product is it's an evolutionary product. I've been with the product 20 years, and before I joined, a lot of very smart, hardworking people put their blood, sweat, and tears into the product. So the product's been around for 40 years, and it's evolved. It started out on mainframes. It went to distributed systems. It went to client-server model. To DCOM, and now it's web services enabled so that you can leverage the best of the old features using the best of the new interfaces and such. It enables the capacity planners to analyze, forecast, optimize capacity down to a process level. So in some cases, you can identify that something went wrong, but we can tell you why something went wrong down to a process level. So there's a view of the world that's a binocular view. You could see something is hot. We're more of a telescope. We can actually zoom in on a particular problem and tell you exactly what's burning, what's hot, and how to fix it. The capacity agent, it's optimized to use low utilization. I'm not going to give you a number. In general, it's 2%, but it depends how much data you're measuring. So the key with the agent is that the measurement can't impact what is being measured, and I haven't seen that particular case in 20 years. So it's fault tolerant. We have different executables making sure that the agent is running, and it's fairly lightweight in terms of utilization and efficiency. We have a gateway server that automates, tens thousands to 10,000 to 100,000 agents to make sure that every day things are being collected, they're being transferred back to the gateway server, and they're being processed where you can see the results. On the architecture slide, we're integrating with the ETL engines via the gateway server, so all the requests are sent out to the agents. Multi-threaded, multi-process, making sure to utilize your machine to its most potential. And when things go wrong, we identify exactly what went wrong. So there's advantages to using the best practices that I'm going to talk about. They include the reduction of complexity of the whole process. It avoids and limits customization. So whenever we introduce a new feature, you'll be able to take advantage of it. And if you customize and something doesn't work, it's a lot more difficult for us to help you as well. We increase the scalability by having multi-processes, multi-threads communicate to these tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of agents in order to make sure that everything is working as expected. And when things are not working as expected, we can identify and recover from these unexpected failures easily and quickly. So I'm going to give you a demo. I'm going to show you how to create and schedule a list of agents. I'm going to discuss the scalability and some problem identification, as well as the recovery. So let's get started. I'm going to log in to my console. I've configured two consoles. One already has the node that I'm going to be adding these agent lists to. And I'm going to actually go through the whole process of end-to-end of adding the agent lists and making sure that things are being done correctly. In terms of scalability, I do want to talk about scalability. So how many agents should you put on an individual gateway server? So we support both Windows and Unix gateway servers. And on Windows, Windows is not as scalable as Unix. And so I would put between 1,000. Okay, there's audio is breaking up. Is that better? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Dima, go ahead. I'm not hearing you break up, so I'm trying to respond to.
Okay. I'm just. I'll move my microphone around. Is that better or worse?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
You might have a network challenge over there. So with.
Okay. No problem.
Go ahead. Just keep going.
Great. Thank you. So for the Windows gateway servers, I would put on each one. I would put 1,000 to 2,000 agents. And on a Unix, I would put anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 agents on a Unix gateway server. So here I've configured 3 gateway servers. 2 of them are our solutions engineering platforms. If you notice, we support both HTTP and TLS, so we can communicate from the application server to the gateway servers securely, or just using traditional web services. And the gateway server is web services based. If I click on an existing gateway server, it's going to show me the auto ETLs that are currently configured. Click on it. And yes, so the question was, you can configure 1,000 agents on a single gateway server. And yes, it's what I would do on Windows, and on Unix I would go with a higher number. Okay, let me just, fortunately I have another, okay, it finally came up. I think I was too happy clicking, so I'll go back. I'm going to click on the gateway server. It's going to show me the auto ETL run that are configured already. And the auto ETL run consists of an agent list that is basically a list of agents that we keep track of. So I'm gonna, okay. And so I'm just going to show you how to create a new agent list rather than trying to create an existing one. So we have these agent lists that are basically split amongst themselves to the best practices for capacity optimization. And they're scheduled. We create an ETL change that automatically process them and populate them to VCO. We can identify to see what is running and what is not running by going to the gateway operations. And it's going to show us basically a breakdown of all the things that are all the node lists that are scheduled, their current status. These are the ones that are running today, and these are the ones that are finished, and we can determine if they're working correctly, if there's some sort of an issue. We'll talk about more high-level problem diagnostics as well. If you don't like, if something needs to be recovered, you just select it and select multiple ones and hit recover, and they'll automatically be recovered for you, which means the things that are on the agents will be transferred back to the console. They'll be processed, generating BIS files, which are a text representation of the data that was collected at the agents, and then these BIS files will be available by the GUI for display purposes.
Hey, Dima, we have just a quick question. What version are you showing, and is that auto ETL view you're looking at different from previous versions?
So the version that I'm showing is 11.3, which is our latest version. And I believe the auto ETL feature was introduced in 11.0 release. And it hasn't changed from 11.0 to 11.3. You can identify what things worked, what things didn't work, and in addition, you can identify what worked and didn't work on a node basis. So if you're interested in a particular node, whether it experienced a problem or not, you can show everything, show every single node, or just the nodes, agent nodes that have an issue. And whenever something goes bad for a particular node, we record an error code, which gives you an exact information about what went wrong. In this particular case, the agent that was added did not is an invalid node. It's not in the DNS. So I'm going to go into another gateway server, and I'm actually going to create an agent list, schedule it, and then we'll go look at some of the capabilities of seeing root cause analysis for determining if things worked or not. So in this particular case, I am going to add an existing gateway server, and these are the steps that I would do to do that. Step 1, add the gateway server. Okay, I'm just going to take back here. I'm going to find the gateway server. Okay. Okay, I'm going to give it the name. I'm going to keep all of the parameters the same. I'm going to select the auto create ETLs to populate the data, to create the ETLs and the agent lists. Okay, it's going to ask me a series of questions in terms of how many manager runs you have for the ETLs. In general, I would keep the defaults. Where to put them, whether it's a new domain, existing domain, or the entity catalog. I'm going to keep the defaults here as well. What time the ETL is going to run to consume the viz files. I'm going to keep the defaults here as well. Okay? So now I've added my gateway server. So the next step is adding the lists, the agent lists. So I've created a little example of the agent list. These are all dummy agent lists. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to check my defaults, because we try to come up with a really good default, but in your environment, you may want things a little different. So I'm going to, yeah.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but we had a question. Is there a way to explain briefly why you prefer to use an agent list as opposed to rather than self-registration?
I'm sorry, I don't know what self-registration is. Just individual recommands files or manager runs?
Eric?
So the reason why you'd want to use an agent list is because if you create your recommands and manager runs, you actually have to physically place your nodes into each manager runs and kind of balance them out. You don't want to have really one manager run with 1,000 nodes and one with 10 nodes, because one will take much longer than the other one. So by putting things in a list, the product will automatically slice and dice your nodes and apply the best practices. So you don't need to do the rebalancing, and if you need to add a node, you just add it to an existing text file versus having to, go to the GUI or modify these individual files. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right, no problem. So I'm going to set my defaults. Before that, I'm going to actually check my defaults. And so the primary settings that you may want to change is the things such as data management, which is, how much data you want to keep. Do you want to delete data every every 3 days, every 7 days? Our defaults in general are pretty good. You may want to modify that. The other thing that you may want to do is you may be interested in collecting data in a high resolution or summarizing the UDR data into, either hour or 15 minutes. So that's something that you may want to change. The other thing is you may want to generate visualizer files at, instead of every hour interval, every 50 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever you'd like. And so those are some of the parameters that you would change. And once you like them, you would just click this button and do Save Settings as Default, and that new settings will become your new defaults for each manager run. Now, you can have agent lists that have different defaults, but make sure that when you do an audio ETL that I will show you, that you actually change the defaults between submitting each individual run. Okay. So I'm going to start adding an agent list to my computer, to my machine. I already have 2 configured. So I'm going to add, okay. The name I'm going to give it is demo. The agent lists are actually in a file that I've created. Okay, and let me show you the contents of that file. So I put it right over here. And the file is rather simple. Let me actually open it in another notepad. So the file is rather simple. I just had all you have to do is just put the name of your machine. In this one, it's agent 1, agent 2, agent 3, up to 30. And then you can rearrange them, you can modify them on the gateway server, and things that are removed will be removed, and new things that are added will be added into an existing manager run or a new manager run. The format is an agent node per line, or if you don't have DNS resolution for a particular node, like for example, I did 127.0.0.1, and you want to give it a name, you can do that as well. So the format is rather rudimentary. It's either the DNS name or an IP address and an alias that you want to have the node be used. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go through the defaults. The name is demo. I've chosen a file. That file will be uploaded to the gateway server's location, user ADM best one workspace, which is a good location because it's outside of any versions that we would have. So if you migrate, it's going to be a good thing to do. So you're not dependent on a previous version having data when you upgrade. So since I want to show you how to break up the things into smaller chunks, I'm actually going to have 5 nodes per policy, and I'm going to have 10 nodes per manager run. So what will happen is my 30 nodes will basically have little lists that are 5 nodes each, and the maximum that I can have for manager run is 10. So for 30 nodes, I'll have 3 manager runs, and I'll have 6 policies, and each manager run will be associated with a policy. So once again, if you notice here, I'm using all the locations that are outside of the version that I'm using. So when I migrate in the future, that'll be very easy to do.
Hey, Dima, quick question while you're doing that.
Okay.
Would you recommend having separate agent lists by platform? For example, one for Windows, one for AIX, and so on?
So there's different ways you can slice and dice them. That's one way you could do it. That's a good way to do it. The other way is you may want to do it by time zones, or you may want to do it by function. So you can slice and dice the agent list however you feel is going to be the best way of doing it. But the most common one is exactly the use case you described, where Windows go in one list, Unix goes in another one, maybe AX gets broken down even further. But I've also seen it done by time zones and function as well, like HR, development, production, things like that. So, no problem. So we've created a run called demo. Corresponding ETLs were created. Okay. As we add more things, they'll get consumed. We want to make sure that the run that we have was actually scheduled. So we have demo 1, demo 2, demo 3, exactly how we want to slice and dice our nodes. So the base one is going to be demo, and all the ones that follow, to split the nodes will have a number attached to it. Let's see. So I'm going to just show you the policies that were created. Here, as expected, we have 2 policies for each manager on, which is exactly what we specified. And these policies will have the nodes that we specified in there. Okay. So how do we know that we can trust exactly what happened? So now the requests have been sent to the agent, and so we have all of our, so I'm just going to apply a filter to the demo one. And so what it's telling us is that, of course, I added dummy nodes, and currently it's, all of them timed out, trying to connect to it, so we identified it as failing. So I can see the same thing in node history. If I select a particular, well, that hasn't processed yet. So once we try to process those non-existing nodes, it'll come up with additional error codes. But currently we have things that show us the ongoing status of the run, where things are, I'm going to pick a particular date, just today. So it shows us all the runs we picked are basically, having issues because I made them up. And if we want to see what happened yesterday for runs that were scheduled on this platform, we can see that as well. It'll tell us how many things were finished or failed. And if we wanted to recover something, we would just select it and hit recover. So the most important tab, in my opinion, once you have your manager run started, is the status and recover page, because that gives you a top-level view. So I have, I believe, about 5 minutes. So I'm going to show you two tools that that allow you to get a daily idea without having to log into the console. The first one is something that comes directly from the GUI itself, and that is the Gateway Manager report. So I'm going to select a report. It's an advanced report. And what the report is going to do is it's going to give me an overall count of how many things were successful on the particular console. It's going to be diagnostic. I'm going to select Gateway Data Feed. It's going to show me the health of my console for the last 30 days. That report can be emailed to me on a daily basis if I wanted to. I'm going to select just a PDF format of it, just to keep it simple. But XLS is another format you can choose. I'm not going to have it mailed. I'm going to call it just Demo Self-Monitoring Report. Okay, I'm going to finish it. It created it. I'm going to run it. So while it's going on, so this report is going to be a very high-level report. It can be done via the GUI. It's going to tell you, like a binocular view, that something failed. It's going to just tell you the overall numbers, and that's going to give you a key to log into the system and maybe recover. We also have a more detailed report that will show you the a view of your system for each manager run for each node, called the General Manager Lite. So what you have here is all of the consoles that I have added are actually going to be displayed, and each number of how many you have configured in the manager runs, how many were collected, how many transferred, how many processed, and how many were actually put into the VCO database are going to be displayed. So for the different consoles that we have, some of them started recently, some of them started a few days ago. Each line will tell you the overall health of the system. This is a much more interesting one. This one will start a couple of days ago. Initially, we had 10 nodes, and then we ramped it up to 200 nodes. And what we don't want to see is we don't want to see a drop once we have steady state like this. This is not a good thing. We want to investigate exactly what happened. So this is a high-level view. In addition, you may want to, in the communities, there's a view, there's a description of a tool which summarizes the results of gateway servers, and you basically just need to configure this tool on a single gateway server, and it'll collect information from all of your other gateway servers. And this particular tool will give you node-level information as a function of the 30 days and trying to group the manager runs. And it'll get emailed to you as well. It'll be in text format. So this tool is, you basically call this script, and the daily execution gets scheduled, data gets put on the gateway server. From a single gateway server, you can get as many gateway servers as you want, and that really has a lot of information. And I'm just going to spend 1 minute that I have left looking at the output of that particular report. So,
hey, Dima,
yeah.
We also have a bunch of questions, so we're probably going to run a little bit long. I hope folks can stay with us a few extra minutes, but make this quick so we can get through those questions.
So previously you saw the picture. Here you have a similar thing. It has an overview of the differences which you have configured today versus yesterday and the changes. So it's really easy to read. You can see if you have a big drop exactly what happened. It actually does some a little chart as a function of time. But the advantage of this particular run is it actually shows you if the particular manager run has an issue for a date, and you can track down the problem runs and then have a little more information for the recovery. And an even more detailed set of files are stored once you configure this feature on the gateway server itself. A node-by-node base is a single file that can be sent to. Okay, so let me get back to the questions.
Okay, let me go ahead and run through them. So you mentioned that it's 1,000 agents per gateway.
Yep.
How many? Is there a limit to how many gateways you can connect to a manager? Is there a limit for the amount of agents you can manage through a manager?
There is no that you could. I mean, we have customers that have 100,000 nodes, so they do. I mean, so I would probably go in. They go in a higher end. They go like 5,000, so they probably have 20 consoles that they connect to each one. So it's more of a function of nodes rather than manager runs. I mean, you could create a manager run per node, but I wouldn't advise that because the recovery will be very difficult in that case. So I would kind of apply the best practice which would be 25 nodes for policies, 100 nodes for manager runs. So that's how I would split them up.
You cut out for a second. Can you repeat the answer there?
So I would do 25 nodes for policies and 100 nodes for manager run.
All right, thank you. Just typing that in, sending it to everybody. Okay. In terms of entering the node description, is the GUI the only way you could do that, or can you add the node description in other places?
The node description, the GUI is the only way you could do it. From the list, you can only add, the node description into which part of the product when you're collecting it. So in the agent list, you can only enter 2 fields, which is usually you just enter one, the DNS name and the an alias if you have one that's something that's not in DNS.
Okay. We may have to follow up on that one.
Yep.
Debbie had asked that question, and I'm not sure. We might want to follow up on that. Okay, a couple more questions. How do you manage new servers that are added after manager runs have been created?
Okay, so when a new node is added, and there's no room in the existing ones, so we're going to, because you might have added a node and you removed it previously, we're going to put it in a new manager run. We're going to start that new manager run. And that new manager run is going to have extra slots based on how you define your policy for additional nodes to be added to it. Does that answer the question?
Hopefully. I will put it in the answer box and we can come back. Okay, we have 2 other questions that I see. Okay, so first is, do you have best practices for managing or keeping track of very large numbers of nodes, like in the thousands? I think you've kind of already touched on that, but anything you want to add to add color?
I've seen implementations where, I mean, it's a list, you add nodes, subtract nodes to it, really try to keep it very simple. I've seen people query a CMDB to generate those nodes from the location. So the key here is that you should, if you're managing multiple consoles, you don't want to move nodes around from one console to the other one. You want to keep them in that particular list. So if you're managing multiple consoles, just to make sure that once you put a node on a particular console, you keep it there. Because otherwise it's going to add subtractions, additions to the list. It's going to make recovery very difficult. So that's my only recommendation is that, you can tie it to any sort of database you want and have it output in a CSV format, but just make sure that once you put something on a particular gateway server, you keep it there.
Okay. Okay, I have a content question and a quick question. Can you install the gateway server in a high availability or OS cluster?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, that's easy. And does the TSCO agent coexist with basically patrol agents or TSIM agents without degrading server performance.
Yes, because what happens is the patrol agents, when they leverage the data collection, so we have different processes. There's an agent process and there's a collector process. And the collector process is separate, and the data is consumed by our agent and it's consumed by the patrol agent. So you're not doing double collection, which is the heavy duty, the really heavyweight piece. So the hierarchy allows you to be really efficient, regardless of how many consumers you have for the same data.
Okay. A clarification question. Domains, the .dmn in version 10 are now called policies in the new GUI. Is that correct?
So the domains and policies are more of a historical thing. The domains are still called domains on Unix. And on Windows, because it was a different format that came later, they're actually called policies because those policies came from another tool that we had to investigate. So we still have both domains and policies. Policies are on Windows and domains are on Unix.
Okay. You cut out there just a little bit at the end, but I think we got that.
Okay, so just domains are on Unix and policies are on Windows.
Right. Okay. Last question. This is from Kathir-san. He's asking for when you're doing storage optimization or backup archival DR, do we have recommendations for which KPIs are relevant that we should be configuring it to collect? And maybe we can just point him to some documentation if that exists. I don't understand that particular question, so I'd have to get more details on that. So maybe if you can email you and email it to me and I can answer that. Because it shouldn't be, backups, since the collector just consumes data that is live. It doesn't, go against any particular, data source that would be affected by backups. Okay, I will have him or her email me directly.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Okay. I think we're way over, but we still have plenty of people on. I want to thank everybody for hanging tight and for attending. And I'd like to thank Dima for an excellent presentation and for staying on to entertain all your questions. If you have additional questions or issues that you would like to follow up on, please contact me directly. My contact information is in the email invite you got. It's also on the communities page. This session is recorded, and I will process and post the recording on BMC Communities in probably the next day or so. And I just want to remind you, we do this every 2 weeks. And there's also, the Dima has a presentation associated with this that I'll also upload to the communities event for your access. And if you have suggestions for topics, if you would like to present yourself, please reach out to me, and thank you all again. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. All right. Thanks, Dima. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.